Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here today. I'm Mediatrice, and welcome to Breaking Barriers Building, our anti-discrimination workshop here today. So I am the program coordinator for the Young Black and Femme Collective, also known as YBF, as you can see behind somewhere right there. With me today is the YBF team. We have Ashley Maddy, our system navigations coordinator. We have Viviana Gomez, who is our communications, and Tunisia Stevenson, who is our community outreach and engagement, and Mariam Alatal, who is supporting Tunisia in community outreach and engagement as well. So again, thank you very much to everyone who has joined us here tonight. It's definitely going to be an enriching session. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that YBF and the Canadian Women of Color Leadership Network are based in Ottawa, which is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We honor the enduring presence, resilience, and contributions of Indigenous peoples and recognize the importance of continuing to learn about and support reconciliation, equity, and justice for all causes. So today's workshop is about creating a space for learning, reflection, and conversation. We recognize that discussions about discrimination can be personal and sometimes difficult. So we encourage everyone to participate in ways that is comfortable for them. A few quick community arguments that we've put together for today's session. We're calling on each and every one of you to respect different perspectives and lived experiences, listen with curiosity and openness, speak from your own experience, be mindful of confidentiality and privacy, and take care of yourself throughout the session and enjoy. So we can get into it, and I will pass it over to Viviana now to get us warmed up.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. So as she was sharing with you, we'll be doing just a quick and short activity to warm up a little bit and to get to know us a little bit better. I'm sharing right now in the chat a link to join us during this activity. It's a Mentimeter, and I will be sharing also my screen. We want to know a little bit about you, so what's something that brings you joy or peace? You can enter a word, a couple of words in the box that you can see in your screen. Oh, I love that. The sun, eating, the nature. Oh, I love those words. Reading. Oh, I also love reading. That's amazing. Food. We have some foodies here in the room, so that's amazing. I'm gonna wait for more people to join us. Praying, breathing, oh, the nature as well. Sleep. You have to rest. That's very important. I love that. Great. So I'm gonna move on to the next one. Um, what's your go-to comfort movie or song right now? You can also type your response in the box that you have on your screen with your phone. Thank you so much for sharing, guys. If more people want to share with us, I want to dance with somebody. Oh, Whitney Houston. I love that song as well. Right, I will be moving on to the next one. Uh, we'd love for you to share an emoji that represents your mood today. You can type in your emoji in this little box. So I'm gonna share mine as well. You can see a smiling face, a heart. That's amazing. I'm gonna move on to our next question. Oops. So we want you to complete this sentence. A community feels welcoming when. Please feel free to fill in with uh, whatever you want to share with us. That's amazing. When we can share openly, when we can include all cultures, that's great. We show respect to everyone. We accept that as yeah, that's amazing. Everyone is heard. We feel belonging. Oh, I love those words. Uh, those resonate very well with YPF Collective. I'm really glad to see those responses. We feel belonging. That's great. I'm gonna wait just 1 minute to see if anybody else would like to share with us. When there's short food, yeah, I love that. Sing and dance together. I can really feels really welcoming when we sing and dance together, especially when we can create some great memories from that. That's amazing. So those were the questions that we have prepared for you to kind of warm up a little bit. Thank you so much for everyone to participate with us. I'm gonna be passing along to Mediatrice again to share more about who we are and why are we doing what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Viviana. And thank you guys very much for your responses. While I was talking about food, you were echoing my mind. You always have to remember that it's very important. Okay, so briefly, I'm going to go over who we are for those who are joining us for the first time, for those who've not heard about us just yet. Um, so you'll be learning more about YBF and the organization behind YBF. YBF, the Young Black and Femme Collective, is a youth initiative developed under the Canadian Women of Color Leadership Network. And the program was created to support and empower Black and racialized youth and as they grow into confident participants, professionals, and future leaders. So while many leadership programs focus on advancement, YBF focuses on the early stage as youth prepare and struggle to strive forward. So basically what this means is we provide a safe space for people to come together as peers, people who have the same lived experiences or similar lived experiences, to sit together, to have a safe space to talk, to share about whatever their struggles may be, whether that be academic, whether that be professional, whether that be in the transition between the two. So this would be the place for you to come and get the assistance that you need or to find the community that you need. YBF was born from the Canadian Women of Leadership Network, which was founded in 2018 in Ottawa. Um, it's a national community organization dedicated to supporting Black and racialized women in leadership, advocacy, and professional spaces. Through mentorship training and community programs, the network works to address the barriers that prevent many women of color from accessing opportunities that match their qualifications and ambitions. So you can see how YBF would be a subset of CWCLN, focusing more on people within the ages of 18 and 35. And it's not just for women in this case. It's open to all Black and racialized youth and men. So the mission at the core, the mission of YBF is to create a safe space, empowering spaces that foster leadership, connection, and resilience for Black and racialized women and men across Canada. Our approach is centering lived experience, intersectionality as a guiding framework, commitment to anti-oppression and justice. So here are the four core pillars of CWCLN. That's community partnership and events, wellness, women in leadership, women's economic. So this is like one stop if you're looking for any way to grow within the Black community here in Ottawa. YBF and CWCLN will be a place for you to go to, whether that is getting skills, in women's economic development, whether that is understanding your mental health much better, whether that is getting support, mental health support, do that through peer support, whether that is getting experience or getting some resources when it comes to leadership. They're here for you, having a community that you can always go to. This will be the place for that. So why YBF? Simply put, with YBF, you leave, it's going to be a program that runs, it's a program that runs for a year. and you leave with a resume and portfolio, practical communication skills, mentorship connections, peer mentors for future cohorts. So like I've mentioned earlier, we're here for you, whether it's academic, whether that's in the professional field, whether that's the transition between the two. Sometimes we go to school and we do not know that there are resources for people, Black and racialized youth here in Ottawa that we can always take advantage of as we find jobs, or if we're looking for a mentor, someone who works in a field that might be skeptical about, there is always someone to go to, and we are here to guide you with that, or to help you understand that you can actually go out there and find these resources, whether it be on your own or with our help. Okay. As I've mentioned, it runs for 12 months. It's divided into different phases, and we are still in the first phase. That's foundations. That's why we're here now to understand where our problems stem from, understand what issues we have to deal with, and how to just building that awareness and then understanding how to manage it, but how to navigate society or why dealing with all of these, and in this case, discrimination. Phase two is confidence and well-being. It's phase three, career, entrepreneurship, and advocacy. And then phase four, community leadership and transition. So if you want to find out in the chat, we would share the links to the YBF website, and you can always get more details for what we do and how we go about it. So we are open to volunteers. Volunteers play a critical role in sustaining safe spaces, facilitating peer circles, mentoring participants, supporting workshops, and helping coordinate events. We have a lot of events coming up that we are planning for, and we cannot do it just on our own. We are very open to having volunteers. If you want to get more experience in community development, want to give back to your community in any little way, there is the barcode. I'm going to give you a few seconds, just scan the barcode. Tell us what you're most interested in, what skills you would like to build, and see how to fit you into our team. There is always room for everybody. So a few more seconds. Has everyone scanned it yet? Okay. And all right. That's about it. Now you could leave your questions in the chat if you would like to find out more about YBF or CWCLN. We are always happy to share that information and to welcome new people into the team. So I'm going to pass it over to Ashley, our system navigation support, to tell you more about how best or what resources we have available to support you.
Thanks so much, Mediatrice and Viviana. So hi everyone. My name is Asli. I work at CWCLN as the System Navigation and Community Support Lead, and I also work with the YBF team. My presentation will be quite brief. I'll just kind of quickly go through system navigation, and then if folks have any questions, I'll also leave my email in the chat, and we can also connect there. Okay. So what is system navigation? Because I find that it's quite different depending on, different sectors and things like that and conversations that I've had with folks. But essentially, system navigation supports community members in locating and connecting with the health and social services that they need in the city. So it can involve a variety of different things like assessments, doing case management, making referrals to like other organizations or other services in the cities, and just providing general support and orientation. So kind of the way that I've described it to people sometimes is like, if you're a bit older like myself, if you remember the yellow pages, it's kind of like a directory where someone may reach out and be like, hey, I need to connect to like a food bank. And then I would kind of work with them to find, a food bank service close to them and things like that. So kind of think of it as that way. So I'm just helping kind of like the map that's on the slide, just kind of helping guide people to where they need to go. So there's a variety of different system navigators, and different organizations have it structured in different ways. So some examples can be a health system navigator, so helping folks, figure out where they can access a family doctor or specialist. Community navigator, so that could be a variety of different things. That one is quite broad, but I might come back to that one. Justice navigator can be supporting folks who have, come into contact with law enforcement and have a bit of history there. So it could be someone providing maybe not legal advice in that sense, but maybe like legal information, some orientation, things to kind of expect. And then something like a reintegration navigator for someone who may have been incarcerated, someone who may have been receiving treatment and they've kind of been away from work and different parts of their life, and a reintegration navigator would help them kind of get back on their feet and just kind of get them settled into like a new routine. So the type of system navigation that I'm doing is quite broad. I would say probably like a community navigator and maybe a little bit of health system navigator in the sense that people may be coming to me for a variety of different reasons, like I mentioned, food bank, it may be related to work. Um, Housing, social supports, peer support, etc. So I just kind of do my best in kind of connecting people to where they need to go and connecting them with the right organizations and the right people. So the way that we're doing system navigation at CWCLN is that we'll be bridging Black and racialized women, femmes, non-binary, and gender diverse community members to different services in the city, as well as connecting folks to services that and programs that we have in-house at our organization. So as I mentioned, be connecting folks to a variety of different things like food banks, addiction services, mental health services, STBBI, so sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections, as well as HIV testing. That was the sector that I was in for almost 5 years. So that's also an area that I feel personally comfortable connecting folks to. And to kind of get things started when someone is coming to me for system navigation, the first thing we would have to do is I would share a link, and there's this QR code on the left. You're welcome to scan that. And that takes you directly to our intake form. So we just ask a few questions about the different types of supports folks are looking for, what their current situation is, any sort of accessibility needs, etc. So it's quite a robust form, but it helps us give us kind of a bit of a clearer picture of where folks are currently dealing with right now, and then what kind of supports that they're looking from us. And then in terms of kind of going back to where we started talking about YBF, because I'm also a part of YBF, is also with this role connecting folks to some of our internal programming at CWCLN. So for folks joining us here, this could be connecting to our different peer support groups. So we have three. We have the African, Caribbean, and Black, or the ACB mental health peer support groups that meets on Mondays, 11 to 1, I believe. And then our virtual BIPOC peer support self-care group, which is on Fridays, midday as well, or yeah, in afternoon as well. And then I think what would be the most relevant for this group, just for folks who are youth, is our It's a Vibe peer support group for BIPOC women and femmes 18 to 35, so younger crowd. So there's that group as well to be able to connect to. So if that's something that folks are interested in, there's also room on the intake form. If someone were to kind of, click peer support or social support, this could be something that you can connect to. All of these are virtual groups as well. Of course, everything is free too. So that's something that's very much available to you. And another one of our programming that's currently running is the Zuri Sister Circles. The full title is Zuri Sister Circles, a sacred space for community and wellness. So this is a program that is for Black women, femmes, non-binary and gender diverse folks. So we talk about wellness, we talk about healing, we talk about identity, culture, and just kind of provide a space to reduce isolation and reduce stigma, and just kind of have a freer space for folks to come and get that support and also just do activities as well. So this is a 7-week program. We just finished week 3 today, so we have 4 more weeks. So that is another program as well. We have also like a multitude. So I definitely encourage folks to go onto our website and just have just have a look, have a quick scan. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you all so much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Ashley. for that presentation. As you guys can see, well, we do the most we can to be here for you guys. So I think before we get into the main presentation, because that's what we're getting into now, we've not given a chance for those joining us today to say anything. You're welcome to put your to unmute yourself or at least indicate it with an emoji before we move forward. We're going to invite our guests now to come in and do the main presentation. Before we do that, I'd like to get a few reactions. So now we'll move into the main portion of today's event. It's my pleasure to introduce Sarah, who will be facilitating our anti-discrimination workshop, Breaking Barriers and Building Belonging. So just a brief intro. Sarah George is a doctoral candidate in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, specializing in African Studies at Carleton University. She is a Joseph Armand Bombardier Scholar whose area of interest are Black studies and sociologies of race, gender, knowledge. She will explore the hip hop era through her dissertation titled Being, Becoming, and Belonging: The Black Radical Tradition of African, Caribbean, and Black Women's Resistance. Sarah has taught an arts-based community-engaged third-year sociology course in partnership with the Ottawa Catholic School Board for 4 years. Currently, she is a graduate student representative for the Black Canadian Studies Association. She is the founding chair of the Institute of African Studies Emerging Scholar Conference, co-founder of the Umoja Black Community Engagement Program at Carleton University, and the former president of the Institute of African Studies Graduate Student Association. She also serves on the board of the Canadian Women of Color Leadership Network. So guys, we don't bring you just anybody. That's why we have Sarah George right now with us. So that should tell you a lot. So take it away, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. It's nice to see you all. I'm excited for the workshop today. There will be a lot of opportunity for you to participate, but we'll also be sharing a lot of information today as well, but feel free to jump in anytime. The idea is really that this is supposed to be a conversation, not a lecture. So today we'll talk about breaking barriers. So I'm originally from Zimbabwe. You got the rest of my professional introduction, but a lot of my research interests are really based on where I'm from and also my experiences growing up in both the United States and Canada. So I moved to North America when I was 4 and then kind of moved all around ever since then and ended up in Ottawa for grad school. So the experience of being racialized as Black in both Africa and North America, in places like Zimbabwe, Canada, and the US is really how I arrived where I'm at now. We can go to the next slide. I have some photos of the Zimbabwean Revolution. Yeah, so Zimbabwean independence is pretty unique because it actually took place in the 1980s. So it was in 1980, so it was very recent. And similar to Canada, Zimbabwe was a settler colony, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. So we actually had an armed struggle against that. And Bob Marley, which is the picture on the top, I think that's the right, actually performed at our Independence Day festival. So Pan-Africanism was a big theme for us as well. Next, please. Next, I'd like to get a sense of who we all are coming into this space today. So if you guys want to tell us where you're from or put it in the chat, and not necessarily where you're from. I know that's a really loaded question, but maybe where you call home or consider home. Okay, Calgary, Morocco, Syria, Somalia, Nigeria, Colombia, home's now Vancouver, but originally from Pakistan, Congo. So I don't even think we have 2 people from the same place on the call, which we'll again talk more about. And the YBF folks, don't be shy. SVG City. Okay, Sophia, I know that's you. Shout out to the Ottawa folks. We do have a lot of those actually. Iraq, Cameroon. See, we're from all over. So I want you guys to keep that in mind as we talk specifically about what it means to be Black in Canada and the Black experience here. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the Black Canadian context. We'll spend just a tiny bit of time talking about how Black people have resisted in the past. And then we'll move on to Ottawa and talk a little bit more about local issues, how people have responded to those, and how you can respond to those in your own personal life. Next slide. And some of the key terms that we'll be working with today are anti-Black racism. Under that larger umbrella are ideas like bigotry and discrimination, microaggressions, which we will talk about, and also the ideas of specifically settler colonialism. And in terms of Black resistance, we'll talk more about Pan-Africanism, especially because of the differences amongst all of us in the Black population in Canada. Next, please. Okay, so feel free to turn your mics off for this one because some people may have more information than others, but who actually learned anything about Black history in Canada, maybe in school or in your own life? And what can you tell us about that history, whether it's an event or a general theme? I wanted to get the conversation going. If the answer is nothing, that is okay.
I was gonna say literally nothing. I feel like I'm a product of like the 90s color blind era of everything. So it was kind of like multiculturalism great and there's no, racism here kind of era. So
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. By a show of hands, how many people would agree with Ashley? And it might be for a different reason, perhaps. Thank you, Missouri. So you know about the history of Black people in Nova Scotia. That's really important. Anybody else? And we will we will just touch on that a little bit. Okay, the creation of Black History Month, and that was passed in the House of Commons. Thank you. Yep. So we do have our own Black History Month in Canada that we had to advocate for. Okay, not too much about the culture. Anybody else? Do we know anything about Black history in Canada? This is not uncommon. Most people, we can go to the next slide, Beatrice. Thank you. This is not uncommon. Most of us don't learn about Black people in school, and once you get out of school, there's not really an opportunity for you to have these kind of conversations. So thank you to Missouri who brought up already African Nova Scotian people. We go by many names because there are Black people in every region of Canada that have historically been there for hundreds of years. So we are both one of the oldest, longest standing, like non-settler, non-Indigenous groups, and also one of the newest and fastest growing groups at the same time. So you have both Black people that have been here for 4, 5, 6 generations, basically since the inception of Canada. And then you also have people who are just arriving, and we're one of those biggest groups. Asian people are always the biggest, but we are second. And then there's 3 waves of arrival for Black people in Canada. The first one is slavery and colonialism. We won't talk very much about that today, but we will touch on it. So that's from 1604 to 1867. Then we see that the immigration policies change in Canada once it becomes a nation, and there's different labor policies that bring in a lot of people from the Caribbean between 1867 and 1962. Then the Multiculturalism Act and multiculturalism as an idea comes to be, and we see more African people coming from the continent of Africa. And yeah, so African Nova Scotians, 8th generation, Windrush era. Exactly. So we have folks that have been in what we now call Canada for up to 8 generations. Thank you so much for that, Sophia. Next slide. Okay, so true or false? The first race riot in North America, and North America is Canada, the US, and Mexico, happened in Canada. Is that true or false? It is absolutely true. The first race riot in North America is the Shelburne race riots in Nova Scotia, in Shelburne, Nova Scotia. So, exactly. Crazy, right? So the photo there is of the historically African Nova Scotian communities. At one point in the 1700s, the largest population of African people outside of Africa were in Nova Scotia. And a lot of those people had served in the American Revolution on the British side in exchange for land and freedom. So they came up to Nova Scotia and they were greeted by white soldiers who did not want them there. And eventually that culminated into a riot. So this idea of Canada, like historically and always being a safe space for Black people or for enslaved people, does definitely have some holes in it. Next. The key concept we'll be talking about today is anti-Black racism specifically. There's two layers to this. There's this systemic level, which we see in every aspect of society, so housing, education, but there's also personal, the interpersonal level. So we'll be talking more about that today in terms of bigotry and discrimination. And there is like discrimination can exist at both levels. You can have systemic discrimination or personal discrimination, but bigotry is specifically personal intolerance or hatred. Now, anybody can be a bigot, but when we talk about discrimination and we talk about racism, those are actions that require social power, social capital. So it's important to make those distinctions where discrimination is the actual action or policy of practice of the unequal treatment. And racism is the overall idea that there are innate differences between human beings based on their skin color that's used to justify differential treatment. So we're focusing specifically on racism towards people that are racialized as Black. Next slide. And a bit more about this in terms of slavery. The picture here is what we call the Atlantic Triangle. So Canada always presents itself as a place that, again, was a safe space for slaves, but it was actually a really important stopping point during the transatlantic slave trade. So Canada profited for over 200 years, and places, especially like Halifax, were very deeply, deeply involved. That's why you can find banks like Scotiabank all over the world, right? And Halifax is a very, very, very tiny little province that doesn't have the greatest economy in Canada, but yet you can find Scotiabank all over the world. So those kinds of things are connected. We'll go to the next slide. And the second key concept here is settler colonialism. So Canada is specifically a settler colony, and the difference between this type of colonialism and other types is that people actually come and move to displace the indigenous populations, and then they don't go away. And they typically use slavery and indentured servitude in order to build their new nation. So in Canada, it was typically African people and to a lesser extent Indigenous people that were enslaved. And then we see a lot of Asian people being brought over as indentured servants to do things like build the Canada Pacific Railway. And so, yeah, what are some other settler colonies? There is kind of a clue on the map, but if we were to name them, can we identify some of the others in the world? Yeah, Australia, excellent. South Africa, I said Zimbabwe in the beginning. There's one really close to us as well. The US, absolutely. The United States. We also had indigenous people there there was a genocide, ongoing genocide, and they were wiped out, right? Also places like Algeria, there's a lot of settlers in Kenya. So yeah, those are some examples, and this matters because like Canada now is a white country, right? But we know that indigenous people, this is their land. They're still alive, they're still here, and they face very specific types of genocidal social oppression that enable the country to continue. So we'll move to the next slide. Okay, so what year was slavery abolished in Canada? When do we see that transition? Is it 1834, 1793, 1608, or 1902? That's correct. It's 1834. Very good. Did this mean freedom is the big question that we are still asking ourselves. So, after the abolition of slavery, we see kind of a different struggle taking place in relation to racist immigration policies. Go to the next slide. So, who is in these images? Marcus Garvey they call him the Right and Honorable Marcus Garvey. He's a Jamaican Pan-Africanist who founded the United Negro Improvement Association in the early 1900s. Don't quote me on the date. But Marcus Garvey, the UNIA actually had a stronghold in Montreal. So the photo that you're looking at there is of the UNIA in Montreal. And you can see how many women were there and were present and were involved. One of them was actually Malcolm X's mother. She was very active and present at the UNIA in Montreal. And so we see in Canada that a lot of the struggles that are happening internationally make their way across these borders as well, because Caribbean people who are coming from the Caribbean, but they're also coming from the UK, where they've been for a very long time, and other different diasporic places like the United States are coming and they're bringing their radical consciousness with them. So we see a lot more of these organizations being established in places like Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. Another example is the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters is established during this era. We also see both the Black Power and the civil rights movements take place in their own way in a Canadian context. And much of those are led not just by Afro-Caribbean people, but specifically by youth, by students. So we'll go to the next slide. The key concept here, which Ashley already mentioned, is Pan-Africanism. And so what we really want you guys to get out of this workshop is that despite all of the horrible things that we have and continue to go through, we have and always will resist every form of dehumanization, and we will do that together, right? And that's really what Pan-Africanism is about. There's no one specific definition of Pan-Africanism. But it encompasses both the social movement, an ideology, a political philosophy that calls for Friends of Africa and people of African descent to join together and unify in our struggle against social oppression. So this encompasses everything from abolitionism during slavery to the Black Power movement to the civil rights movement to more recent movements like Black Lives Matter. All of that is under the larger umbrella of Pan-Africanism. And it's really important for us to see that Pan-Africanism is what fuels a lot of the organizations that Black people, in particular women, end up developing during this era and now into the contemporary time. So moving from the 90s to now, what do folks think is the population of Black people in Canada today? Yes, Miriam, it is 1.5. Yes. As of 2024, there are 1.55 million Black people in Canada, which is about 4% of the population. So we are, I believe, the second largest, quote unquote, racialized or visible minority group. Okay, so next. And that has increased 76% since 1992. So we're getting more and more folks like Shingai, like myself, like a lot of us on the call that were coming from the continent that are now meeting the people like African Nova Scotians that have been here for generations, and the Afro-Caribbean people that also have now been here for 4 or 5 generations as well, and sometimes much longer. And the demographic of who is Black is changing. Most of us live in cities, like really big cities, like Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. There's a lot of people in Edmonton as well. I believe Edmonton has actually surpassed Calgary at this point. But yeah, we can go to the next slide. I think I have this information on there. Yeah, there's over 170 nations, 200 ethnic origins. So outside of Africa, this is one of the most diverse groups of Black people in the world in Canada. And again, some people are descendants of the enslaved and have been here for a very long time. And then some people come more recently during those waves as different laws change and different things make it possible for people to come. We also have a very large Francophone population of Black people in Canada, which is very well represented in Ottawa. So we'll talk a bit more about that next. Yeah, so specifically in Ottawa, Black people are the largest racial group in Ottawa. It's 44% of the Black people in Ottawa are Canadian born. So you have both people that were born here and people that are coming newly. Some people are landed migrants and a lot of other people are refugees. We've got almost a quarter of people that are Francophone and nearly half are bilingual. So it's good representation here of the entire population. And you can see that in the seven largest groups, just like we saw when I asked everyone in the beginning, where are we all from? That people are coming from everywhere, right? From East Africa, from West Africa, from the Caribbean. And we are all then lumped under this one large category called Black. So that is why Pan-Africanism is something that has constantly been used by Black people in Canada that are advocating against issues that they might be facing. So go to the next slide. Now I want to talk a little bit more about how racism might show up for people in their everyday lives and what it might look like. Yeah, I'll stop there and open the floor.
I can kind of speak a little bit on that experience, I think.
Sure.
Just coming from like a Black person myself, it definitely feels like, as I said before, quite quiet. And it's to the point where it's so quiet that it's really hard to call that out sometimes, where you can see it and you sound crazy when you mention it, and you feel like there's no like action plans to the way you kind of address it to a certain extent.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So it's a quiet form of racism. It's not super loud. That's great. Microaggressions, yeah. Does anybody want to talk? Microaggressions are a form of discrimination that take place interpersonally in between people. So it's those little everyday cuts that you would experience from folks. Like the little comments about your hair when it changes. Hair is a very big one. Um, Questions about your country of origin that could be inappropriate. It could be if you have a parent that is not Black, them making comments about you or about your Black parent that make you feel uncomfortable. All of those things constitute microaggressions. Your name, yeah, people mispronouncing or refusing to say your name is absolutely a microaggression. Yes. Or people deciding to change your name for you without your consent because they've decided that they can't say it. But I want you guys to think, I find that the questions I ask, usually this is the response because there's rarely space in Canada for us to talk about our experiences with race. And when we do, like Bazuri said, it's quite often a very quiet response, or you have no sense of where you can really go or what you can really do to advocate for yourself. Yeah, so definitely lack of access to certain services and resources. Do you want to talk a little bit about what kind of services or resources?
I would say, for example, mental health, which is something I experienced myself, being an international student in Canada, away from family. I think it's more common than not that you experience some sort of isolation, and having see that you can always go to, or having someone who understands you is not something that is obviously out there. Mental health services are not designed with Black people. So you will not find it's difficult to find someone in that area that would be able to understand, at the cultural level, especially what you're going. So that's something that is not considered. Those decisions are the systems.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, mental health is a huge one. Ashley talked in the beginning also about sexual health and access to those services. So it shows up literally everywhere in education. I work in education. People, yeah, Ashley just mentioned that. We also know that in Canada, there's also a pipeline. So students as young as grade 4 are siphoned into lower level classes by guidance counselors and by teachers. There's issues in housing as well, particularly in Ottawa. Access to housing is a major, major, major space, a major issue. We see that also in, yeah, another microaggression, you speak well. So somebody calling you articulate or, yeah, where are you from? That question as well is very loaded and assumes that you could not be from Canada. And here we have a really good comment. So, as a South Asian person, it can also present as the need to be a model minority, even when we know it means throwing other members of our community under the bus and othering them just to feel accepted. Absolutely, absolutely, yes. And the model minority is the idea that there are some racialized people or minorities that are better or more superior than others based on qualities that are assigned to them. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward. Um, yeah, and then biases and unfair hiring to jobs based on your looks. Absolutely, yeah. Also on your name, right? I've had a lot of folks complain about maybe the resume doesn't even go through and then they change their name and all of a sudden they're getting a lot of phone calls. So that's an issue as well. Yeah, name and postal code. Yes. Oh, yeah, that's a huge one. Sophia just brought up too, is colorism. So we know that dark-skinned women experience unique forms of oppression based on the fact that they are dark, right? And anti-blackness is based on the closer you are to whiteness, the better. But of course, as a black person, you will never be white. So you will never be close enough, right? Regardless. Or as a South Asian person, or as a Latino person, or whatever, right? You will never be white. You will never reach that pinnacle. And so the best you can do is step on everybody else that's beneath you. And colorism is a way for people to do that. We also know texturism is an issue. So depending on the texture of your hair, people are treated differently. Okay, so there's all kinds of ways that that this shows up. Oh, yes. Very good. So being seen as unintelligent because you have an accent. That is a huge one. The accent, right? Or Canadian experience and not being able to get a job because you don't have Canadian experience. But particularly the accent thing is very big, especially in education. A lot of professors that are seen as having accents, or when you're going for a job interview, like, yeah, the accent is a very, 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 very big one. Um, Right. So policing Black women's bodies or the way that we present ourselves, talking about the Atlanta housewives with the hair color and the nails, pointing out people's hair extensions, right? Like all women wear hair extensions. But when a Black woman wears hair extensions, suddenly it needs to be the topic of conversation, right? Or maybe you get braids and all of a sudden that's the like, so things like that, people touching your hair, feeling entitled to your space and to your body. The list goes on and on and on. Go to the next slide. Thank you so much, y'all. It was really good. And it also could include like low expectations when you're at work, being punished unfairly. There's high levels of surveillance on Black people in Canada, just based on the type of slavery that we had here. And then we're also made to feel like we don't belong we may be in unsafe learning environments or have parents who don't understand our experiences because either they come from different regions, they may be from a different racial background. There's a lot of Black people in Canada who are mixed, and so on and so forth. So how exactly do we respond to this? I think this is the big question that we've all come here to answer. And what Pan-Africanism really teaches us, what the history really teaches us, is that we have to move as a collective. We have to work together. So you don't have to face these issues by yourself. And the absolute main thing is that you don't internalize them, right? It's not your fault that people treat you this way. These are systemic issues, and these are issues that we will have to work together in society to change. So the things that you can do in order to empower yourself in this environment include equipping yourself with knowledge. So when I ask the question, about Black history in Canada, about what it means to you to be Black, about how racism shows up, we should be able to answer those questions with confidence so that when we see it happening in our lives, we can identify it and we can identify different options that we have to respond to it. But we have been dealing with these issues for hundreds and hundreds of years. So there are a lot of blueprints. There's nothing new under the sun. So there's nothing you are dealing with that a Black person in the past or a person of color in the past has not dealt with. And it's very important for you to know that, right? And for you to, again, not internalize and not blame yourself for the experiences that you have. So equip yourself with knowledge. This means that if you're at work, you should understand what your responsibilities are at work, but you should also understand if your job has a human rights policy, if they have anti-discrimination policies, what the processes are, what the success rates are, right? Like, have you seen somebody else go through that process? If so, what did it cost them? Can you afford to lose the job at the moment? You're going to have to do a cost benefit analysis to ask yourself that, right? Because depending on the company you work in, you may file a report and then end up being the one that is let go because there's not always going to be accountability in those situations. So you do have to protect yourself as a person that has to survive in the world, right? But don't be afraid. And also know the history of the local Black community. So there's a lot of Black women in Ottawa and in Calgary, Alicia, and women of color that have organized spaces like this one in purely to support you. That's the main goal of the space is to support you and to ensure that you have everything that you need to advocate for yourself, whether that's tools to navigate the system, whether that's literally just peer support and people to talk to, or if it's literally resources. Women have set these things up for one another. So what you need to do is take care of and stand up for yourself, but always prioritize your safety. Like, don't Black women don't have to be on the forefront. You don't have to be on the front lines of anything. Just like Audre Lorde taught us, it is a revolutionary act to take care of yourself as well, right? In a world that expects you to always be giving and taking care of other people, simply taking care of yourself is a revolutionary act, is how you can respond to this by taking care of yourself, by not letting these things wear you down. Because racial trauma does impact people not only mentally, it will impact your health. Okay? So you have to take care of yourself. That doesn't mean that you should be afraid to stand up for yourself, that you should be afraid to advocate for yourself. But when you do, make sure that you're not doing it alone and that you know the risks of what you're up against, right? Because these are systemic issues. So you will be up for a fight. And I also encourage folks also to participate in community collective action. So we'll talk more about some of the options that are available in Ottawa. We can go to the next slide. There's a long history of Black student activism in Ottawa. One example is the Asilu Collective, which I have a photo of here. That's Maya Spoken, who's also a famous poet in the region. But when she was a student, she was also heavily involved in activism that got the the resource officers out of schools. So there were issues with racial incidents in the police officers and Black youth in the high schools in Ottawa. So they established this collective, they worked with the school board, and they got the police officers out of the school. And that was a group of students. There were no teachers, there were no principals, it was the students. And they did that all on their own. And to this day, those resource officers are not in those schools. Okay. And we also see that there's new organizations that are popping up in Ottawa. One of them is called the Lucasa Library, which is a community library that has books specifically about like anti-colonialism, decolonization. They have African history classes every week. And the caretaker of that is Dr. Clyde Ledbetter, but the actual library is being run by 4 youth who have been there for the past 4 years and do all of the programming out of the library. So Black students are also establishing their own associations. We're seeing a lot more Black History Month events, scholarships coming out. The youth are really getting together. We're also seeing this a lot on the university campuses as well. At both Carleton and the University of Ottawa, Black students have been very, 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 very active. And at the University of Calgary, students came together and raised $800,000 in order to establish an African Studies program, which now has professors. So I really want to empower you guys to feel like if there's something that you see and you want to get done, you can do it together if you want to organize and change something. We'll go to the next slide. And these are some of the other organizations in Ottawa that are doing just that. Most of these organizations are led by people who grew up in Ottawa, were youth in Ottawa, and know exactly what it felt like to grow up here as a Black person in Canada. But we also have some newer ones, like the Somali Mothers Association. A lot of those are immigrants. Justice for Abdirahman Abdi. For those who are not from Ottawa, Abdirahman Abdi was murdered by the police in 2016, and Justice for Abdirahman came forward after that and ended up suing the police service. Um, you know, there's Presidential Hoops, which is Lowell. He went to the United States and now he's come back and he runs basketball programs for youth. There's so many. Like when I was doing my master's, there were over 100 organizations that I identified that were dedicated to supporting one aspect of, if not the Black community, the racialized community as a whole, or anti-discrimination, or just providing some sort of support. So it's really on you to kind of seek these supports out and get involved with these kind of organizations, which clearly, if y'all are here, that's what you're already doing. But really to make sure that you're making use of as many of them as you can. And if I have missed any, other folks that are on the call, please feel free to add them in the chat, because I know there are so many. There's just so many. I missed Project Agape, which provides support for survivors of sexual violence. So like there's just so many. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'm wrapping up, but the key themes that we had, really that I wanted you guys to leave the workshop with, were the ideas of Black resistance to discrimination and dehumanization. So we talked about how Black people in Canada worked together to resist slavery, and that resulted in the abolition of slavery in the British world in 1834. And then after that, we saw the establishment of different freedom movements like the United Negro Improvement Association, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and so on and so forth, that were established because although slavery had ended, we still had a lot of systemic issues in the society as a result. We also talked about how diverse the Black population is in Canada, and that started with all of us saying where we're from, and literally, I don't think any of us were from the same place, and that's a very common experience. So it differs from places like the United States, or maybe even our countries of origin, where people, maybe there's 10, 12, 15 ethnic groups, but not as many as 200 like we see here. And then finally, Black people in Ottawa, especially students, are resisting. And this is happening at both a personal and a collective level. So, personally, what we're encouraging you guys to do is take care of yourself, prioritize your mental health, your physical health, really your spiritual health as well, your emotional health, and put yourself first. You do not have to be the sacrificial lamb. You do not have to be a people pleaser. And if you do find yourself in a position where you need support, there are a lot of people and there are a lot of organizations out there that are there for you. Find a group activity to be a part of, find a collective to support you, and then go ahead and advocate for yourself and fight with everything that you have. So thank you so much for your time. If you guys have, oh, that's it for me, Beatrice. If anybody has questions, you can put those in the chat. And we've also got some information about programs that will be starting in September. So I encourage you to attend those. They're amazing. I don't even register and I literally always go to them because they're incredible. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, so very much, Sarah, for the insightful presentation. I'm very sure we all left with something or we're wondering something.